Hey, and welcome to The Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe.
Michigan 9-1 in conference last year, 12-2 overall. As you said, they won the Big Ten. They went to the playoff. More importantly, they exercised the demons. They beat Ohio State. They beat Ohio State for the first time since Jim Harbaugh got there. I give Harbaugh a lot of credit for that resurgence we saw last season. The 2020 season was weird, but not good. Not good at all.
Speaking of Nick Cage's catalog, there are moments that can qualify as that. Continue.
I mean, there's a Wicker Man in there for Jim Harbaugh, but 2020 was not good. There were obviously cries at the start of last season to maybe go in a different direction. They didn't. He was under a lot of pressure to deliver, and they most certainly did. So good on him. And going into this season, into 2022, they're in a really good spot again. They really, truly are. There are some notes, though. You know, I've seen a lot of unbridled optimism about Michigan going into this year, and I would push back a little bit on that, if only because, A, both coordinators are gone. Right, Josh Gaddis sort of left in a huff and went to Miami. Mike McDonald went back to the pros to be defensive coordinator for John Harbaugh at Baltimore. Jim Harbaugh filled those vacancies in the most seamless way possible, promoting two guys from within to be co-offensive coordinators, and then another guy off the John Harbaugh. I get him confused. John Harbaugh coaching tree and Jesse Minter to run the defense. So, for the most part, it's going to look the same out there, but anytime you're changing coordinators, however much they would try to promote the fact that it's going to be seamless and effortless and it's going to look the same, it's always cause for pause. Our favorite pet charity, is it not?
It is absolutely our favorite, yes. So walk me through our 2022 Michigan experience and where things stand now.
Yeah, 8 starters back on offense, which I think is good. It obviously puts the offense, in my view, in a much better place than the defense, which we'll talk about in a second. But offensively, Hassan Haskins and 2 linemen are gone. Everybody else is back. They're going to be just fine. The main question I have is whether Cade McNamara is going to be the guy. If he's going to be the guy longer term. He led Michigan to new heights last season. He was careful with the football. He obviously knows the offense, but there is a ceiling to his game. And I think it's fair to ask whether or not JJ McCarthy's skill set, JJ McCarthy being the much-renowned backup, if that skill set can take Michigan to a new level. I think it gets interesting if Michigan's power rushing attack, which this season is going to be led by Blake Corum, who you referenced earlier in the show, if he is unable to take this power rushing attack to the same heights as last season, then it's more of a conversation. What's interesting to me, if you look back at what Michigan did last year, they attempted just 28 passes per game, which ranked 96th in the country. It worked great. They made the playoff. They won the conference. If it doesn't work as well, if they need to throw more, if they need more of a dual threat guy back there to give them more options, I wouldn't be surprised if McCarthy becomes that number 1. That is not the case at time of recording. There's no reason to think that Cade McNamara is going to lose his spot randomly in the offseason. But I could certainly see it. Again, if Blake Corum and to some extent Donovan Edwards, another name that is going to be part of that rushing attack, if those guys can't get it done, if they can't replicate what we saw last season on the ground, then that conversation at quarterback I think is a real thing. But we got to wait and see.
Yeah, to me, the quarterback question is it has to be a no-brainer to go to JJ McCarthy, because you know that Cade McNamara's ceiling is where it is, and that is can beat good teams, cannot, not single-handedly, but cannot be the answer against a great team. And that is where, if JJ McCarthy leaves no doubt, then JJ McCarthy is the guy. If he shows some of the raw mistakes that he made as a freshman still, if he hasn't developed to that point where you have to roll with the obvious talent upgrade, then we're going to see this question lingering, I think, throughout the season. But what I find to be weird about Michigan going into this season is the excitement's around the offense. Yeah. The excitement is around the emergence of playmakers and, oh, this guy at receiver. Oh, this guy at running back. This guy's actually going to flash at tight end. Like, their tight end group is incredible. The offensive line has come a long way. Whereas it used to, you know, going back to the Don Brown time, we were like, they just year over year have star power on defense. And maybe this is the face-off situation, a Castor Troy situation. That's the Nicolas Cage character.
We're going all Cage everything here on the Big Ten East preview.
But that is the flip of the narrative, I think, going into the season with Michigan, is it not?
Well, it is. And I was going to say it's a perfect segue. I am a little worried about the defense. The offense brings back 8 guys. The defense loses 7 guys. Schematically, I think it looks the same. In general, I think the defense should be good enough, but you can't undersell what it means to lose Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo, and Daxton Hill, in addition to guys like Vincent Gray and Brad Hawkins from the secondary. That's a lot. That's a lot. I still think they'll be good. But that's a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, look, Michigan at a certain point, if you're going to distill it, to me, and you dipped into the Wolverine batter a lot more than I have.
Yeah.
I don't know what dipping into batter. I guess, yeah, you're frying up something. Is if you're going to distill it down, if you're going to reduce it down, it's who on Michigan is good enough to make the quarterbacks at Ohio State and Michigan State uncomfortable. Last year, the answer was obvious. This year, I don't know, is Donovan Jeter? Is he the sort of big name on the line right now, or one of the big names? Like, that's all it is, because C.J. Stroud can be made to feel uncomfortable occasionally, is not great improvising all the time. But Michigan State they're not as reliant on quarterback as they had a great running back last year, whatever. It's just the discomfort factor and who Michigan has to provide it. That's all it is.
Yeah, and that's important perspective, because outside of like 3 or 4 opponents, they're playing teams with pedestrian offenses, man.
Yeah.
They've got plenty of guys who rotated in or started a handful of games last season, so they'll be fine. We throw out that down 7 starters number. They're not rebuilding after the flood. They'll be fine. But it will take some time, I think, for this thing to kind of, as I like to say, congeal, to mold into its future state. It is just a lot to lose that much high-profile NFL talent. You might not notice until like mid-October, when Sean Clifford's thrown it 50 times a game because their running game collapsed. That's when you would see any kind of issue here with this Michigan defense. But otherwise, outside of that, outside of the end of the year when they've got to go up against Ohio State, I think they will be fine. They will be fine. They will be solid defensively. It just might take some time to really understand how good they are or aren't. The schedule for Michigan is beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Is it?
Insert, what is the eyes emoji, whatever emoji you would use for something beautiful. Insert the hearts, the little yellow guy with the hearts hugging. Insert that right here. You cannot ask for much more. Toughest road games at Ohio State. You're going to have Ohio State every year. That's a tough spot. They're also at Iowa. Okay, tricky. But they're on the road against Indiana a week after Iowa and a week before Penn State. Maybe you could kind of classify that one as a trap game. I don't know. But otherwise, it really sets up well. You know, they're going to play the teams they're going to play being in the Big Ten East, but all things considered, I think this sets up about as nicely as you could expect.
Where's the state game? Is it in Ann Arbor? Or
the state game is in Ann Arbor.
Great.
So it just sets up really well for them. The over-under is 9.5, which I believe is the correct number here. I don't think they do worse than 9-3. I think that's the floor for this team. They will be, again, very, very good. 11-1's the ceiling. Like, they're kind of right back in that territory where they were last season. I don't think they're beating Ohio State. I don't think anybody's beating Ohio State, which will be a recurring theme throughout the course of this episode. But beyond that, if you told me Michigan is a comfortable second in the East, I could totally buy that. I could subscribe to that thought in a heartbeat.
Here's my bigger picture question about Michigan, and this is just you speaking from your gut, from your pancreas of knowledge, which I don't believe knowledge is stored in the pancreas.
It could be.
The attention to detail from Jim Harbaugh, right? He has that reputation as a micromanager. He's on people constantly. He wears people down because the attention to detail is what makes him a good coach, right? The intensity there.
Sure.
He tries to become the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, doesn't get that gig, and quickly says, okay, I have abandoned my NFL dreams. I'm all in Michigan for the next 100 years or whatever. Loses both coordinators. Do we think that it's possible, especially coupled with, if you're a believer in early recruiting returns, because Michigan, I think, has like the number 40 current recruiting class. It has not been a great year on the trail, as Ohio State's loading up, as Michigan State has been very, very good on the trail. Is there a concern that Jim Harbaugh is nesting, that he's just sort of settling in for the next phase of his Michigan tenure as sort of the figurehead, the beloved guy who finally broke through, and the juice and the fire are not necessarily going to be there when it's sorely needed, with 2 new coordinators, with quarterback competition, with the search for star power on defense, that attention could wane within the Michigan facility?
I understand why you ask that question. I don't think that's the case with Harbaugh. We have no body of evidence to suggest that this guy ever gets comfortable in one place for too long, right?
No, I know, but we have a piece of evidence that he'd rather be in Minneapolis. At least after going through the playoff, he thought to himself, all right, I have done what I want to do, and there's an opportunity to be elsewhere that excites me.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't get it. Let's stay together forever. That's weird.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that he's not going to be looking for an NFL gig at some point in the next couple of years. So I don't think it certainly does not.
Oh, you don't buy that. Okay.
Yeah. It does not behoove Harbaugh on any level to just stand pat and kind of cruise through this thing. I think he will be fully engaged. I think he will have Michigan playing at a very high level.
All right.
I do think, though, at some point in the future, he's going to look for the NFL again, or the NFL will look for him. You know how these things go. Right. I don't buy that for one bit, but I don't think he's just going to rest on his laurels. That's not who he is.
Not rest on his laurels, but there was a part of him, there had to have been a part of him that said, I finally broke through, and I did. This was my goal, to break through, beat Ohio State, get to the playoff, and I accomplished it. Not that he was happy with only losing in the playoff, but that something was satisfied to the point where he could look back to the NFL as the next step. And when the NFL said, we're not interested, Jim, I just think it's hard to re-engage. I don't know.
We'll see.